You remember I was gone, it was a couple weeks ago, I was gone for a couple days. And one of the places I was all over the place, was I was at a reunion for the Marine Corps. Guys I went to Iraq with, we had a little Marine Corps reunion. We didn't do anything fancy. We're not fancy people. We rented some ratty little house on a lake and we made cheeseburgers, had a couple beers, caught up on old times. That's what we did. But one night, we were sitting around, it was actually the first night, we were sitting around just laughing, joking, talking about people we miss and times we had. And we decided we wanted to talk to our old first sergeant. For you non-military types, that is a very, very senior enlisted guy. He's a very senior enlisted guy, okay? We decided we wanted to talk to him. Now, I got out of the Marine Corps in 2004. I was a 4-year infantry Marine. And we all, as we discussed him, we said, yeah, I wonder, do you think, should we call him? I don't know, it's too late, should we call him? So I pick up my phone, I shoot him a text message and say, hey, Sergeant Major, because he was a Sergeant Major when he retired. Hey, Sergeant Major, we're sitting around gabbing, me and the fellas. You want to talk to us? 30 seconds. My phone beeped back. Oh, absolutely, call me. This was at 11:30 at night. We call him, we put him on speaker at 11:30 at night, and he just sat and talked to us. He wasn't in charge of us anymore. He wanted to know how we were. How were our lives? How were our families? How were our jobs? Did we need help? That was one of the first things he asked. Hey, you guys need anything? Are you okay? I can't properly explain to you better than that what a senior enlisted guy, what a staff NCO, non-commissioned officer, just a senior guy like that, what he means to the troops, especially the young troops, the 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. When you're in, even when you're out, they are father figures. I'm still in touch. Again, I've been gone for 20 years. I'm old and gray and fat. I've been gone for 20 years, and I still talk to multiple staff NCOs of mine because they guide me, they mentor me, they're friends. When you're in, they're everything. They are father figures for you. And that brings me to this story about Tim Walz. Now, I know you're not a big fan of Tim Walz. I'm not a big fan of Tim Walz, his crazy positions and all these things. And I just set that aside for a moment. I already know he's a dirty communist. It's not that. Tim Walz was about to be the command sergeant major of his National Guard unit as they deployed to Iraq. That means he was going to be the senior enlisted man in his unit. He was going to be the father figure to all those young men who were about to leave the safety of home and walk into a combat zone at a time in Iraq when it was nasty over there. IEDs and death and misery. And this man, with all these young soldiers under his charge, after he found out he was going to be deployed, quickly turns in his retirement papers so he can go and run for Congress and not deploy with his troops. Now, if you are military or a veteran, your blood pressure is already spiking through the roof. If you're not one of those, that's fine. I'm certainly not talking down to anyone. I hope I properly conveyed what that means and how despicable that is, how cowardly and despicable and gutless that is. You are the mentor, father figure, trainer. Yes, you are the disciplinarian. As a senior enlisted guy, you are essentially the dad for the troops underneath you. And when his sons were getting ready to deploy to combat, Tim Walz said, "Have a good time, boys. I want to go be in Congress." That is so revealing about who this person is in the worst possible way. And I know about he wanted tampons and put tampons in boys' restrooms. I know about his gun-grabbing ways. I know about his acquiescence during the St. George Floyd riots. I know all the terrible things about Tim Walz and his positions. There is nothing more despicable about that human being than knowing when his troops were getting ready to go into hell, Tim Walz said, nah, not for me. I'm going to Congress. It is an indictment on the man, and if he agreed with me on every single issue, I would hate that human being until the day I die. You don't do that to your troops. I cannot believe this human being is anywhere near the Oval Office. I can't believe he's a governor. I can't believe he was ever a congressman. And of course, having bailed on his deployment, having bailed on his troops, Tim Walz is Mr. Stolen Valor.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Weapons of war that I carried in war? What war zone was that, Tim? You sent your men over there. You stayed back and sat on your fat butt in Congress while your men went over there and died. What war zone did you carry a weapon in, Tim? Minneapolis? It certainly wasn't Iraq, and it certainly wasn't with your men. What a despicable human being. And of course, because all the communists do is lie, Dome and her surrogates are running to the television to question J.D. Vance's service?
Well, here is Tim Walz, who enlisted when he was 17 years old. He served in the National Guard for 24 years. And I'm not aware of any military service that J.D. Vance has ever served. So let's just make the comparison there. And what happened in the tragedy of the killing of George Marines, Floyd and then the unrest. Yeah, okay, pardon me for that.
These people are awful. And J.D. Vance, who is killing it on the campaign trail, might I add, he responded and responded well.
Bothers me about Tim Walz as a Marine who served his country in uniform. When the United States Marine Corps, when the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I think it's shameful to prepare your unit to go to Iraq, to make a promise that you're going to follow through, and then to drop out.
It's more than shameful. It's cowardice. I could not possibly think lower of anybody than I think of guys like Tim Walz who pull that crap.